I sit cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by tenant maintenance requests. Mrs. Peterson needs her leaky faucet fixed before the weekend. The Johnsons on the third floor reported their heater making strange noises. Mr. Garcia wants permission to install a ceiling fan. This is my Friday night sorting through the small problems of others while sipping lukewarm coffee. The doorbell rings. I glance at my watch, 7:15 p.m. Nobody visits without calling first, especially not on a Friday. When I open the door, my sister Valerie stands there with a smile that doesn't touch her eyes. Her camel-colored coat probably costs more than 3 months of my rent. "Miranda," she says, voice bright and brittle like breaking glass. "May I come in?" Before I can answer, she brushes past me into my apartment, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. She surveys my living room, the stack of maintenance requests, the half-empty coffee mug, the couch with the throw blanket. "Grandma Eleanor crocheted for me years ago. Working on a Friday night? You always were the dedicated one," she says, but the words sound more like an accusation than a compliment. She pulls an envelope from her leather portfolio. "I came to deliver this personally, as a courtesy." The paper feels unusually heavy in my hands. I open it and scan the contents, my eyes catching on numbers that can't possibly be right. "This is a rent increase notice," I say, "from $2,350 to $7,100? You can't be serious. I've lived here 5 years. Fair market value, little sister. Business is business." Valerie adjusts her watch, a gleaming gold Cartier that catches the light. "The family voted last weekend. We're repositioning all the properties for maximum return." My mind rewinds. "Last weekend? At Mom and Dad's?" "You should come to more family gatherings," she says with a shrug. "Important decisions get made." The memory surfaces like a drowning victim, 14 relatives seated around my parents' dining room table. Everyone's eyes had slid away from mine when I mentioned Riverside Apartments. Mom had changed the subject while Dad refilled wine glasses. My cousins had exchanged knowing glances. They had already decided. They had already known. My pulse quickens, mouth suddenly desert dry. My hands tremble slightly as I refold the notice. When they let her crush me in silence, they never imagined that silence would become my weapon. I think, the words forming somewhere deep in my mind where fear hasn't reached yet. "You can't be serious," I repeat, voice steadier than I feel. "I've managed this building since Grandma Eleanor died. I've kept the tenants happy, handled repairs, and collected rent. For which the family has compensated you," Valerie counters. "But sentiment doesn't pay dividends." An old memory surfaces Christmas morning when I was 12. Valerie unwrapped a pearl necklace while I received a clearance rack sweater from the discount store. My parents beaming at her, barely glancing at me. "Your sister knows what she wants in life," they'd explained later. "She's looking out for the family's interests." Grandma Eleanor had pulled me aside that same day. "Your sister seeks power," she whispered, patting my hand. "You seek connection. Remember which one builds a legacy." I study Valerie now, her expensive watch, her manicured nails, the subtle logo on her portfolio that matches the one on her law firm's letterhead. The timing suddenly clicks in my analytical brain. 3 weeks after her firm lost the Westridge case. 2 months after she purchased that new house in Oakwood Hills. Part of me wants to beg, to remind her of our shared childhood. Another part knows it would be pointless. "I'll need to review this with my attorney before responding," I say, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Valerie laughs, the sound sharp enough to cut. "What attorney would waste time on this? The building's legally mine. The transfer papers were signed last month." My stomach plummets. This isn't just about my apartment, it's about my home, my dignity, my last connection to Grandma Eleanor. It's about Mrs. Simmons in 2B who lives on Social Security and bakes cookies for everyone at Christmas. It's about Mr. Peterson, who's been here 40 years and knows every creaking floorboard by name. "Mom and Dad know about this?" I ask, though I already know the answer. "Of course," Valerie says, checking her watch. "Your sister manages all the family assets." She mimics our father's authoritative tone. She knows what she's doing. The smile that spreads across her face isn't about money. It's about winning. About finally removing me completely from Grandma Eleanor's legacy. My phone buzzes. A text message from Mrs. Simmons. "Come down for tea, dear. You look upset." I saw Valerie arrive. The old woman has lived in the building for 40 years. She was Grandma Eleanor's best friend long before she became mine. She sees everything from her window overlooking the front entrance. Valerie notices the message. The tenants aren't your concern anymore, she says, gathering her portfolio. I'll handle communications going forward. Mrs. Simmons has lived here since before we were born, I say. Grandfather clauses are for sentimental fools, Valerie replies. The market doesn't care about Christmas cookies and rent that's decades below value. Grandfather. Mrs. Simmons appears in my doorway, her silver hair neatly pinned back, wearing her usual cardigan and sensible shoes. She carries her favorite teapot on a small tray. I thought we could use some chamomile, she says, not waiting for an invitation to enter. At 72, she's earned the right to ignore certain social norms. Valerie's dismissive glance bounces off the older woman like rain off a windshield. Mrs. Simmons, Valerie says with practiced politeness. We were just discussing some business matters. I heard, Mrs. Simmons says, setting down her tea tray. She straightens her spine to her full 5'2" height. I knew your grandmother for 50 years, Valerie. What would Eleanor say about this? For a moment, Valerie's perfect mask slips. Then she recovers, smooths her coat, and heads for the door. 30 days notice, Miranda. It's all perfectly legal. When the door closes behind her, Mrs. Simmons pours tea into 2 cups with steady hands. Some battles need preparation, not immediate confrontation, she says, handing me a steaming cup. Eleanor faced vultures like this her whole life. She taught me how to handle them. Sanjer. The chamomile's gentle aroma grounds me, slowing my racing heart. A thought forms, crystallizing from the fog of shock and anger. I need to check Grandma's old papers, I say. Mrs. Simmons smiles. I was hoping you'd say that. I stare at the cardboard box on my living room floor, throat tight with a mix of grief and anticipation. 2 days after Valerie's bombshell, I finally gathered the courage to retrieve Grandma Eleanor's financial records from my storage unit. Dust motes dance in the sunbeam cutting across the room as I lift the first folder. The pages inside tell a story I never imagined. Bank statements, property deeds, email printouts. Each document reveals another piece of Valerie's systematic dismantling of Eleanor's legacy. An email from Valerie to a luxury development firm catches my eye. Once we secure full control of Riverside, we can begin converting to high-end condos. Initial estimates suggest 300% return on investment within 18 months. My hands shake. The date on the email? 2 weeks after Eleanor's funeral. Another folder contains minutes from a family trust meeting 6 years ago. Valerie had convinced our parents to sell the lake house, the one Eleanor had specifically mentioned wanting me to have someday. Market conditions favor immediate liquidation, Valerie had argued. My parents had agreed without hesitation. For the family's financial security, Dad had said when I questioned the decision. The same justification echoes through document after document. The small inheritance my cousin Thomas received instead of the antique shop Eleanor promised him. The vacation property in Maine that disappeared into family investments, Valerie controlled. The retirement fund contributions for longtime family employees that were restructured into company expansion under Valerie's supervision. Mrs. Simmons knocked softly before entering with a tray of sandwiches and tea. Her eyes widened at the papers surrounding me. I found rental increase notices for all the senior tenants, I say, voice hollow. She's targeting everyone, not just me. Mr. Peterson's would jump to $5,800. Mrs. Daniels to $6,450. You. Don't worry about me, Mrs. Simmons says, setting down the tray. What else have you found? I hold up a handwritten note in Eleanor's distinctive script. Riverside must remain in the family. The legacy must be protected. The paper feels warm in my hands, like a message from beyond. She knew, I whisper. She knew what Valerie would try to do. While Mrs. Simmons pours tea, I continue sorting through the folders. A pattern emerges, Valerie positioning herself since before Eleanor's illness. Small transfers. Legal document revisions. Quiet consolidation of authority while everyone looked the other way. Your grandmother was no fool, Mrs. Simmons says, handing me a steaming cup. She watched Valerie for years. The realization hits me like a physical blow. Eleanor wasn't just being kind when she asked me to help with her financial records during her final months. She was preparing me, training me. The weekends spent reviewing property maintenance costs, the afternoons learning about tax assessments. She was arming me for this moment. I slumped back against the couch, worldview tilting on its axis. My parents never saw me as Valerie's equal, did they? Mrs. Simmons' silence is answer enough. Every family gathering now plays differently in my memory. The Christmas dinners where my law school application was dismissed, while Valerie's firm partnership made the toast. The summer barbecues where my property management certification warranted a nod while Valerie's smallest court victory earned champagne. The Thanksgiving when I announced my promotion to building manager and mom quickly changed the subject to Valerie's new Mercedes. I've been so blind, I whisper. Not blind, Mrs. Simmons corrects. Just trusting. There's a difference. I sit up straighter, methodically sorting the papers into new piles. No longer chronological but strategic. Evidence of financial misconduct. Documentation of tenant mistreatment. Records of property ownership and transfer. She always waits until people are vulnerable. I say, recognizing the pattern in Valerie's timing. She struck after Eleanor's death, after Thomas's divorce, after the Petersons' medical bills. Mrs. Simmons nods. Predators target the wounded. But being a lawyer doesn't make her invincible, I continue, thoughts crystallizing. It just means I need to be more prepared. The phone rings, and Valerie's name flashes on the screen. I answer the speaker. You have a week to decide, she says without preamble. I'm being generous in giving you notice at all. The market won't wait. I'll need more time to review everything, I reply, voice steadier than I feel. There's nothing to review, she snaps. The decision is made. Mom and Dad agree. Almost on cue, my phone buzzes with a text from my mother. Your sister has carried this family financially for years. We owe her. After ending the call, I noticed a legal brief in one of the folders, a high-profile case Valerie's firm lost last month. Another folder contains bank notices showing mortgage extension requests on Valerie's new house in Oakwood Hills. Credit card statements revealing mounting balances. Partnership meeting minutes, noting pressure to bring in more revenue. This isn't just greed, I realize aloud. She's desperate. Mrs. Simmons peers at the documents, which makes her dangerous. A final text from my father confirms my suspicions. Family gathering next Sunday to finalize arrangements. Be there. A week, I murmur. She's giving me a week before the guillotine falls. Mrs. Simmons stands suddenly. You need Lawrence Carver. Who? Eleanor's attorney. Not the family firm, her personal lawyer, Mrs. Simmons reaches for her phone. He retired last year, but he still consults. Eleanor always said he was the only attorney she trusted completely. While Mrs. Simmons makes the call, I continue organizing the documents. The financial records show years of transactions. Statements from long-term tenants about promises Eleanor made regarding their housing security. Maintenance records I've kept meticulously since taking over management. By the time Mrs. Simmons returns, I've filled 3 separate boxes with organized evidence. Lawrence will see us tomorrow morning, she announces. He says he's been expecting our call. Expecting it? I echo. Mrs. Simmons points to a sealed envelope I haven't opened yet. The handwriting on the front reads, For Miranda, when the time comes. With trembling fingers, I break the seal and unfold a single sheet of paper in Eleanor's handwriting. When the time comes, Lawrence has everything you need. Remember what I told you. Your sister seeks power. You seek connection, and connection will always outlast power. For the first time in 3 days, I feel something beyond shock and anger. A quiet certainty settles in my chest. This isn't about feelings anymore, I say, closing the file folder. It's about facts. Mrs. Simmons smiles, a fierce gleam in her eyes. Eleanor would be proud. Tomorrow, we meet Lawrence Carver. Tomorrow, we will begin to fight back. On Monday afternoon, I sit in Lawrence Carver's wood-paneled office, staring at documents spread across his mahogany desk. Afternoon light slants through Venetian blinds, casting prison bar shadows across papers that just transformed my entire understanding of the last 3 years. Say it again, I whisper, my fingers tracing the embossed seal on what appears to be a deed. Carver adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses, his weathered face kind but serious. Your grandmother left you $920,000 in a private trust 3 years ago. With that money, you formed Stonebridge Holdings LLC with my assistance, of course. Stonebridge then purchased Riverside Apartments from the family trust. I pick up the mortgage papers, my signature staring back at me. The memory surfaces hazily, Grandma Eleanor asking me to sign some contingency paperwork while she was still lucid. I'd trusted her completely, never questioning why. But Valerie has been collecting rent, handling everything for years. She acts like she owns the building. Carver's eyes twinkle with something between amusement and vindication. Miss Wells Harrison never bothered to verify the ownership transfer after your grandmother's passing. She simply assumed control. The realization washes over me in waves. So all this time, I've been the actual owner? Precisely. Your grandmother made you manager of Stonebridge Holdings. You've legally owned Riverside Apartments for 3 years while your sister has merely been an unauthorized property manager. A laugh bubbles up from somewhere deep inside me, surprising us both. Grandma Eleanor planned this all along. She was quite strategic, Carver says, sliding a sealed envelope toward me. Eleanor left this for when the time came. 2. The envelope contains a single sheet of paper with Grandma's elegant handwriting. Don't chase her approval. Build your own ground. My heart pounds against my ribs as understanding crystallizes. This isn't just ammunition, it's a foundation. Valerie scheduled a family meeting for Sunday evening. I say, gathering the documents. She's planning to evict tenants for being late on rent. Carver checks his watch. Then I believe we have a meeting to attend. The week passed in preparing for the confrontation, and with the right support, I will protect my grandma's but now my legacy. On Sunday, the dining room of my parents' Tudor-style home feels suffocating. 14 relatives sit around the glossy table that has witnessed decades of family announcements, celebrations, and betrayals. Crystal glasses catch light from the chandelier, while Mother's prized silver serving dishes gleam on the sideboard. Valerie stands at the head of the table, legal documents arranged before her like weapons. Her camel blazer matches her professional demeanor as she addresses the attentive family. Mother and father sit to her right, nodding in agreement at everything their golden child says. As I was explaining, Valerie continues, Tenant 3B Mrs. Peterson is 3 days late on rent again. I've prepared an eviction notice. She holds up the document like a trophy. Business is business. Mrs. Simmons sits beside me, a guest I insisted on bringing. Her presence makes my parents uncomfortable. They know she sees through their polished veneer to the rot beneath. I've reviewed Riverside's financial records, Valerie adds. We're bleeding money on maintenance for these outdated units. Once we clear out the problematic tenants, we can begin upgrading to attract a more reliable clientele. My mother nods sympathetically. It must be difficult making these hard decisions, darling. For years I would have shrunk in my chair, swallowing objections like bitter pills. But something has shifted inside me, knowledge replacing uncertainty, strength displacing fear. Actually, I say, my voice clearer than I expected. I've reviewed the records with my attorney. The room falls silent. Valerie's smile freezes on her face. What attorney? The doorbell chimes, perfect timing, orchestrated by Mrs. Simmons' text message sent under the table. My father frowns, excusing himself to answer. When he returns, Lawrence Carver follows behind, a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. Recognition flashes in my mother's eyes. She knows exactly who Island. This is Lawrence Carver, I announced, legal counsel for Stonebridge Holdings LLC. Valerie's smile vanishes completely. What's going on, Miranda? Carver places his portfolio on the table, extracting documents with methodical precision. I represent Miss Wells in her capacity as owner and manager of Stonebridge Holdings, which purchased Riverside Apartments 3 years ago from the family trust. The room erupts in confused murmurs. My father's face reddens while my mother's pale to the color of her bone china. That's impossible. Valerie stammers, her manicured hands gripping the table edge. I would know if the building had been sold. Carver slides the deed across the polished wood. Everything was executed legally. Your grandmother ensured all appropriate filings were made with the county recorder's office. This can't be legal, Valerie insists, voice rising. Mother would never. Grandma Eleanor made sure I could protect what matters, I interrupted, meeting Valerie's gaze directly. The building, the tenants, her legacy. My cousin Rachel studies the documents, her accounting background allowing her to grasp the situation quickly. These look legitimate. Miranda owns Riverside through an LLC. Which means, Carver adds calmly, that any eviction notices or rent increases would require Miss Wells' authorization as the legal owner. Valerie sinks into her chair, perfectly tailored jacket suddenly seeming too large for her frame. Her control over me, over the building, over the narrative, visibly crumbles. My father clears his throat. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Carver replies. Just careful planning by Eleanor Wells to ensure her wishes were respected. The family gathering dissolves into chaos. My aunts whispering urgently, uncles checking phones as if answers might appear there, cousins reassessing family alliances in real time. Through it all, Valerie sits motionless, her legal training already calculating counterattacks. As we drive away later, Mrs. Simmons squeezes my hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Eleanor would be so proud. She always said you had steel in your spine, you just needed to discover it yourself. Back at Riverside, tenants gather in the lobby when word spreads. Mr. Garcia from 4 Amperes brings his homemade sangria. The Johnsons arrive with a casserole still warm from their oven. Even the quiet Mr. Watson from the corner apartment joins us. Is it true? Mrs. Peterson asks, her arthritis-gnarled hands clutching mine. You own the building now? I've owned it for 3 years, I explain, still getting used to the words myself. I just didn't know. Their relief is palpable. Years of uncertainty lifting from stooped shoulders and worried faces. Valerie told me last month they were converting to luxury condos. Mrs. Johnson confides. Said we should start looking for other arrangements. Mr. Garcia nods. She denied my maintenance requests 3 times and said the building wasn't worth investing in. One by one, they share stories of Valerie's calculated neglect, her subtle intimidation, her dismissive attitude toward their concerns. Each revelation strengthens my resolve. Carver observes quietly from the sidelines, sipping Mr. Garcia's sangria. When the gathering begins to disperse, he approaches me. This is just the beginning, he says. Eleanor left you more than you know. I watch my neighbors return to their apartments, not just tenants, but a community Grandma Eleanor spent decades building. For the first time, I understand what she meant about connection being more valuable than power. But as satisfaction settles over me, a nagging thought emerges. Valerie won't surrender without a fight. She's calculating her next move even now, probably on the phone with her law firm colleagues. Do I push for everything now, riding this wave of victory? Or do I prepare for the inevitable counterattack? Mrs. Simmons seems to read my thoughts. Don't rush, she advises. Eleanor taught me that the best victories come from patience. Tonight was just the opening move. I nod, understanding completely. What happened tonight wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. I sit at Carver's antique mahogany desk, surrounded by stacks of meticulously organized documents. 3 days have passed since I revealed my ownership of Riverside Apartments, watching shock transform Valerie's usually composed features. The memory brings a flicker of satisfaction, but I push it away. That momentary victory means nothing if I can't secure permanent protection for my tenants. We need to analyze every potential legal challenge Valerie might mount, Carver says, sliding another folder toward me. Your sister isn't just an attorney, she's a strategic thinker who won't accept defeat easily. My fingers trace the embossed LLC stamp on Stonebridge Holdings Incorporation papers. I keep expecting to feel more. Triumphant? I admit. But all I can think about is what comes next. Carver's gray eyebrows lift slightly. That's exactly the right instinct, Miranda. Complacency is how people lose what they've rightfully gained. I spend hours examining property management regulations and LLC statutes, taking careful notes in Grandma Eleanor's leather-bound journal. The familiar scent of its pages grounds me as I map out Valerie's potential countermoves. Each time my mind wanders toward celebration, I redirect it toward preparation. Look at this, I say, pushing a financial statement across the desk. Valerie has been collecting rent under Riverside Management for the past 3 years, even though the property legally belongs to Stonebridge Holdings. Carver adjusts his reading glasses. That's not just misleading, it's potentially fraudulent. I open my laptop and create a spreadsheet to track every maintenance request that went unfulfilled during Valerie's management. Each ignored leak, each postponed repair, becomes a data point in a pattern of neglect that undermined the building's value, while maximizing short-term profit. I'm not doing this for revenge, I tell Carver, though part of me wonders if that's entirely true. I'm doing it because I need to understand exactly what she's done to protect myself from what she might do next. Treat this like a business strategy, not family drama, Carver advises. Your grandmother knew the difference, and it served her well. The next morning, Mrs. Simmons arrives at my apartment with a thick manila folder. Her silver hair catches the light as she hands it to me with a steady grip that belies her 72 years. 15 signed statements from tenants, she announces, documenting maintenance requests that were never addressed, rent increases without proper notice, and Valerie's dismissive treatment when they called with concerns. I add these to our growing evidence collection. Did anyone refuse to provide a statement? Only the Davidsons in 3C, she says. They're afraid of retaliation. We'll protect them either way, I promise. That afternoon, I walked through the building with my phone, photographing water damage in the laundry room ceiling, cracked tiles in the lobby, and the rusty pipes in the basement that should have been replaced years ago. Each image documents Valerie's neglect while she collected maintenance fees that never went toward actual maintenance. Back in my apartment, I pore over financial records that reveal a pattern more disturbing than simple neglect. Maintenance funds from Riverside Apartments had been systematically diverted to an account labeled Management Overhead. The transactions, meticulously documented in Eleanor's records, show nearly $83,000 that should have gone toward building improvements, but instead disappeared into Valerie's personal expenses. The doorbell interrupts my analysis. When I open it, my parents stand in the hallway, their expressions a familiar blend of disappointment and concern that instantly transports me back to childhood. "You're tearing this family apart," my mother says, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her pearl earrings catch the light as she surveys my document-covered dining table with disapproval. "Valerie has always protected us all." My father nods, hands in his pockets. "Your sister says you're threatening legal action now. Is that true?" The realization hits me like cold water. Valerie has been working on them, spinning a narrative where I'm the villain threatening family harmony, rather than the victim protecting what's mine. Did she mention that she diverted over $80,000 of maintenance funds for her personal use? I ask quietly. My mother's gaze slides away. "Business is complicated, Miranda. Valerie understands these things better than I do?" I finished for her. "That's what you've always believed, isn't it? No matter what evidence is right in front of you." Something tightens in my chest, the understanding that my parents may never see the truth, may never acknowledge that their golden child has systematically exploited everyone around her, including them. After they leave with promises to talk sense into me, I return to my spreadsheets with renewed determination. Losing my family's approval hurts, but not nearly as much as surrendering to Valerie's manipulation would. Truth matters more than approval. I whisper to myself, Eleanor's words from years ago finally making perfect sense. I organize another file of evidence, preparing for the battle I now understand is inevitable. The following morning, I sat at Carver's desk, methodically arranging folders into 3 precise stacks. The left contains financial records, showing Valerie's suspicious transfers. The center holds tenant statements documenting neglected maintenance requests. The right displays ownership documents proving my control of Riverside Apartments through Stonebridge Holdings LLC. "How are we looking?" Carver asks, entering with 2 steaming mugs. The aroma of dark roast coffee fills the wood-paneled office. "Everything's in place," I say, accepting the mug with a nod. Tenant notices prepared, financial records secured, building improvement plans drafted. My voice sounds steadier than it did a week ago, when Valerie first appeared at my door with that envelope. Carver settles into his leather chair, the material creaking beneath his weight. "Your grandmother would approve. This isn't just about keeping an apartment building, Miranda. It's about honoring a legacy." I run my finger along the edge of Eleanor's handwritten notes. Her elegant script details every precaution she took to protect what mattered to her. Valerie thinks this is about money. It never was. "That's her fundamental mistake," Carver says, tapping a pen against his legal pad. "She can't fight what she doesn't understand." The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the office as we work. Mrs. Simmons calls twice to report her progress organizing the tenant meeting. Mr. Peterson offers to testify about how I personally fixed his bathroom plumbing when Valerie refused to send a contractor. Even the Johnsons from the 3rd floor provide written statements about mysterious management fees that appeared on their rent statements after Valerie took over. "We're preparing for war, not just another skirmish," I tell Carver as we catalog each piece of evidence. The methodical work calms me. Each document represents another brick in the foundation of our defense. My phone buzzes. Mrs. Simmons. Her name on the screen makes me smile until I read her message. Someone from your sister's law firm just served me papers, claiming I'm violating building policy by organizing tenant meetings. The coffee turns bitter in my mouth. Valerie's targeting Mrs. Simmons now. Carver reads the message over my shoulder, his eyebrows drawing together. A classic intimidation tactic. Target the support system to isolate the primary opponent. My hands clench into fists. I should confront Valerie now. This crosses a line. That's exactly what she wants, Carver warns. Every premature confrontation gives her information about your strategy. Patience. I pace the length of his office, my boots thumping against the hardwood. Mrs. Simmons is 72 years old. She shouldn't have to deal with legal harassment. The phone rings again. Mrs. Simmons called this time. I answer immediately. Don't worry about those papers, dear, she says before I can speak. Her voice carries the calm wisdom of someone who has weathered many storms. Eleanor faced worse from developers trying to buy her out in the 80s. But you shouldn't have to. She wants you to react emotionally, Mrs. Simmons interrupts. Don't give her that satisfaction. I've lived through worse than a strongly worded letter from a law firm. I close my eyes, drawing a deep breath. What do you need from me? Nothing yet. Just stick to the plan. Eleanor knew this day would come. She prepared you for it. Final. After hanging up, I turn to find Carver watching me with something like approval in his eyes. Your sister's making a critical mistake, he says. She thinks this is about property. You understand it's about people. We spent the rest of the afternoon adapting our strategy. If Valerie is willing to target Mrs. Simmons, she might go after other vulnerable tenants. We draft protective measures for everyone in the building, particularly the elderly and those on fixed incomes. When the streetlights flicker outside Carver's window, we finally stop. My back aches from hours hunched over documents. My eyes burn from reading fine print. But for the first time since this began, I feel truly prepared. We have everything we need, Carver says, closing the last folder. It's time to take control. I gather my coat, suddenly aware of how much has changed in just a few days. The woman who trembled when Valerie handed her that envelope seems like a stranger now. This isn't just about me anymore, I say, more to myself than to Carver. It never was. Mrs. Simmons is waiting on her porch when I arrive home. Her silver hair glows under the porch light. Her hands cradle her favorite teapot. Eleanor knew this day would come, she says as I climb the steps. You're ready. The calm certainty in her voice washes over me. The weight of Grandma Eleanor's preparation, Carver's strategic guidance, and Mrs. Simmons' unwavering support steadies me like bedrock beneath my feet. On Monday, Valerie will discover what happens when silence becomes strength. I tap my pen against the stack of tenant applications, but the steady rhythm fails to calm my nerves. The morning sun streams through my apartment windows, highlighting dust motes dancing in the air. 3 days of relative peace since our confrontation at my parents' home. 3 days of believing I had finally taken control. My phone vibrates against the coffee table. Carver's name flashes across the screen. My stomach tightens as I answer. Miranda? Valerie just filed an emergency motion with the county court. His voice carries a tension I haven't heard before. She's challenging the LLC formation, claiming Eleanor was mentally compromised when she transferred ownership. My coffee turns bitter on my tongue. That's absurd. Grandma was sharp until the very end. It's a sophisticated strategy, Carver says. She's questioning Eleanor's mental capacity during the exact period when the paperwork was filed. If the judge grants even temporary relief, you could lose control of everything while this drags through the courts. I press my forehead against the cool window glass. How bad is this? The Register printed an interview with her this morning. She's portraying herself as the victim, claiming she's only trying to protect the family assets from Eleanor's misguided decision. I close my eyes. Let me guess. Mom and Dad are backing her up? Front page photo of all 3 of them looking appropriately concerned. Your father was quoted saying they just want what's best for both our daughters. Carver's disgust is barely contained. Valerie's scheduled a press conference for tomorrow afternoon to explain the situation to the community. The familiar pattern of my heart beating too fast begins. Breathe in, breathe out. What happens next? Judge Harmon set an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Everything we've built could be undone with a single ruling. I grab my laptop, hands shaking slightly as I open my email. The court notice sits at the top of my inbox, the legal language cold and formal. Valerie called me last night. I told Carver. Said she's protected this family for years while I did nothing. Said it was time I stopped playing games. This isn't a game, Carver says. It's a desperate move from someone who's realized she's vulnerable. A knock at my door interrupts us. I peer through the peephole to find my parents standing in the hallway. My father's face bears the stern expression I've known since childhood. I need to go, I tell Carver. My parents are here. Remember, he says quickly before I hang up. Everything we prepared for is happening now. Stay focused. Now they're not rebought. I take a deep breath and open the door. Miranda, my father says, not waiting for an invitation before stepping inside. My mother follows, her eyes scanning my living room with the familiar mix of judgment and disappointment. This has gone far enough. What has? I ask, keeping my voice steady. This childish rebellion. My mother says. Valerie has managed the family properties for years. She knows what she's doing. Just let your sister handle it. She always has. The words sting with their familiar dismissal. I notice my father glancing at the folder on my coffee table labeled Riverside Financial Records, 2020 to 2024. Several neighbors stopped me at the grocery store yesterday, my mother adds. They're questioning if you're being fair to your sister. Think about how this looks. The implicit threat hangs in the air. Community pressure, public shaming, the weight of appearances. The same tools they've used my entire life. I have an emergency hearing tomorrow morning, I say, not engaging with their manipulation. I need to prepare. My father places his hand on my shoulder. His cologne smells of cedar and disappointment. Miranda, be reasonable. Your sister has connections, resources. This will only end badly for you. When they finally leave, promising to pray I come to my senses, I collapse onto my couch. My phone buzzes again, a message from Mrs. Simmons. Come down for tea when you're ready. I heard everything. 20 minutes later, I'm seated at Mrs. Simmons' kitchen table, surrounded by photographs of her grandchildren and the faint scent of cinnamon. She pours tea from her mother's floral pot while I outline Valerie's legal strategy. Eleanor anticipated this, Mrs. Simmons says, pushing a plate of shortbread cookies toward me. That's why she had you keep such detailed records of every repair, every conversation. Carver says we have everything we need, I say, but Valerie's entire career is built on winning cases like this. Mrs. Simmons squeezes my hand. I've already called 12 tenants who've lived here more than 5 years. They'll all be at the courthouse tomorrow morning. Character witnesses for Eleanor's mental state. My phone lights up with a text from Carver. Counter motion filed. Judge Harmon requested all financial records for the past 48 months. Remember what Eleanor always said, patience wins more than power. I've spent my whole life being patient, I say, setting down my teacup. It hasn't exactly worked out well for me. Mrs. Simmons studies me over her glasses. There's a difference between waiting passively and preparing strategically. Eleanor taught you the difference. That's why she chose you, not Valerie. By evening, my living room has transformed into a command central. Carver arrived with boxes of financial records and court precedents. 3 other tenants have stopped by with written statements about their interactions with Eleanor in her final years. Valerie will argue undue influence. Carver explains organizing papers into precise stacks. She'll claim Eleanor was susceptible to manipulation due to age and isolation. She'll portray you as opportunistic. That's exactly what she is, Mrs. Simmons mutters. The judge needs to see the pattern. I say, spreading out maintenance requests spanning 5 years. Show how Valerie systematically neglected repairs while pocketing the funds. Show how Eleanor documented everything. My phone rings again. My parents. I silence it without answering. Tomorrow will determine everything, Carver says, checking his watch. We should review your testimony again. Near midnight, long after Carver has gone home to prepare his arguments, Mrs. Simmons insists on staying. She sits on my couch, needlework in her hands, the gentle click of her knitting needles, a soothing counterpoint to my anxiety. You need sleep, she says gently. Tomorrow we will show them what real family means. I nod, but instead of heading to my bedroom, I pull out an old photo album from my bookshelf. The leather cover is worn smooth from years of handling. I find the picture I'm looking for. Eleanor and me on the building rooftop, watching a sunset. I was 12, gangly and serious. She had her arm around my shoulders. I knew even then, Mrs. Simmons says, looking over my shoulder. Eleanor built this case for 3 years before she passed. Every document, every witness statement, every financial record. She knew exactly what Valerie would do. I'm not just fighting for myself anymore, I whisper, tracing Eleanor's face in the photograph. It's for Mrs. Peterson, who can't afford to move. For Mr. Garcia and his grandson. For everyone Valerie would discard for profit. Mrs. Simmons sets aside her knitting. Eleanor always said you understood what mattered most about Riverside, that it's not just property, it's people's homes. I place the photograph on top of my court documents. I hope I make you proud tomorrow, Grandma. Outside my window, the city lights twinkle against the darkness. Tomorrow morning, Judge Harmon will hear both sides. Tomorrow, everything changes, one way or another. I take a deep breath and begin reviewing my testimony one last time. The following morning, I grip the edge of the wooden table, knuckles turning white as Judge Harriman adjusts her glasses. The courtroom buzzes with anticipation. Every seat filled, a sea of faces from Riverside Apartments, Mrs. Peterson with her cane, the Johnsons holding hands in the third row, Mr. Garcia with his weathered face set in determination. Valerie sits across the aisle, spine rigid in her charcoal suit. Her attorney shuffles papers with practiced efficiency. My parents occupy the row directly behind her, my father's arm draped protectively around my mother's shoulders. They haven't looked at me once. Mrs. Simmons reaches over and pats my hand. Breathe, dear. Lawrence Carver arranges his notes methodically beside me. Remember what we discussed. Let the evidence speak. The bailiff calls the court to order, and Judge Harriman begins. This is an emergency hearing regarding ownership and management rights of Riverside Apartments. I understand there are time-sensitive matters at stake. Valerie's attorney stands, James Preston, from her firm's litigation department. His voice fills the courtroom, measured and authoritative. Your Honor, we contend that Stonebridge Holdings LLC was formed under questionable circumstances. Mrs. Eleanor Wells was 82 and suffering from declining health when these documents were executed. We have medical records indicating she was taking prescription medications that could impair judgment. He presents documents to the court with flourish. Furthermore, Miranda Wells has limited business experience and no legal training. Her grandmother was clearly subject to undue influence during a vulnerable period. My stomach knots. They're attacking Grandma Eleanor's mental capacity, something so precious to her. I breathe slowly, remembering her voice. Patience outlasts power. Preston continues. The Wells family has managed these properties for decades. Valerie Wells Harrison has the professional expertise to maximize returns for all concerned parties. My father nods emphatically behind Valerie. My mother dabs at her eyes with a tissue. Financial records indicate, Mrs. Wells Harrison has increased property values by 23% through professional management. This last-minute claim by Miranda Wells threatens the financial security of the entire family. Judge Harriman turns to Carver. Your response, counselor? Carver rises slowly, deliberately. His movements are measured, but his voice remains commanding. Your Honor, I served as Eleanor Wells's attorney for 34 years. I was present when Stonebridge Holdings was formed, and when Eleanor Wells transferred ownership of Riverside Apartments to that LLC. He lifts a video tablet. Rather than tell you about Eleanor's mental capacity, I'd like her to speak for herself. The courtroom stills as Carver connects the tablet to the display screen. Eleanor appears, seated in her living room, date stamp showing 3 weeks before she passed away. I, Eleanor Marie Wells, being of sound mind and body, make this statement freely and without coercion. Her voice, though softer than in her prime, carries the same clarity and purpose I always remembered. I wish to explain my decision regarding Riverside Apartments. She adjusts her glasses, the same gesture Judge Harriman made minutes earlier. I built this property 52 years ago with my husband Charles. For decades, it has provided homes for working families and seniors on fixed incomes. My granddaughter Miranda has demonstrated the commitment to continue this legacy. A tear escapes despite my determination to remain composed. Mrs. Simmons squeezes my hand. Eleanor continues, I am transferring ownership to Stonebridge Holdings LLC, which Miranda will manage. I do this with full awareness of my actions and their consequences. The video continues with Eleanor answering questions from Carver about her decision, her answers lucid and detailed. When it ends, the courtroom remains silent. Carver produces a thick binder. We have documentation of Eleanor Wells' medical evaluations showing her cognitive functions remained excellent until her passing. Her physician, Dr. Martha Coleman, is present to testify if needed. He turns to another exhibit. We also have comprehensive records of building management under Valerie Wells Harrison for the past 3 years. Financial statements show $83,000 earmarked for building maintenance that was diverted to other accounts. A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Valerie shifts in her seat. These documents, Carver continues, sliding another folder toward the judge, show critical repairs repeatedly postponed despite tenant complaints. Mrs. Ruth Simmons has collected statements from 17 tenants regarding deteriorating conditions under Mrs. Wells Harrison's management. Mrs. Simmons rises, clutching a folder of her own. At 72, she stands with surprising strength. Your Honor, I've lived at Riverside for 40 years. I knew Eleanor Wells as both landlord and friend. She trusted Miranda to preserve affordable housing for families and seniors. Under Valerie's management, our heat failed twice last winter. 3 elderly tenants developed respiratory infections. Valerie whispers urgently to Preston, who looks increasingly uncomfortable. Judge Harriman reviews the documents, her expression unreadable. I'd like to hear from Miss Wells directly. My pulse quickens as I stand. The walk to the witness stand feels endless. After I'm sworn in, the judge asks, why do you believe you should maintain control of Riverside Apartments? I look at Valerie, then at my parents, before turning back to the judge. I'm not trying to punish anyone, Your Honor. I'm trying to protect what my grandmother built. Riverside isn't just an asset to be maximized, it's a community where people have lived for decades. Miss Wells Harrison claims you lack the business acumen to manage such a property effectively, the judge notes. I've been managing it for 5 years, Your Honor. First assisting my grandmother, then running daily operations while Valerie handled financial matters. The tenants know me. I know which radiator knocks in winter and which doors stick in summer humidity. The questioning continues for nearly an hour. Preston cross-examines me about financial matters, trying to expose gaps in my knowledge. But Grandma Eleanor and Carver prepared me well. For each question, I have records, figures, and plans ready. When testimony concludes, Judge Harriman calls for closing arguments. Preston emphasizes Valerie's professional qualifications and the family's long-standing financial interests. Carver counters with Eleanor's clear intentions and documentation of mismanagement. The courtroom falls silent as Judge Harriman reviews her notes. Valerie maintains her composed expression, but her fingers tap rhythmically against her leather portfolio, a nervous habit from childhood. Finally, Judge Harriman looks up. Having reviewed the evidence presented today, I find the formation of Stonebridge Holdings, LLC, and the subsequent property transfer were executed properly by Eleanor Wells, while she was fully competent to make such decisions. A soft exhale escapes from Mrs. Simmons beside me. Furthermore, the financial records presented show management practices that are, at best, professionally questionable. The judge's gaze settles briefly on Valerie. This court upholds Miranda Wells's ownership and management rights to Riverside Apartments through Stonebridge Holdings, LLC. Relief floods through me, warm and overwhelming. Carver places a steadying hand on my shoulder. Additionally, Judge Harriman continues, the court orders a full accounting of all Riverside Apartments finances during Valerie Wells Harrison's management period. Any misappropriated maintenance funds must be repaid to Stonebridge Holdings within 60 days. Valerie's composure finally cracks. Her shoulders slump slightly, though she maintains her rigid posture. Any further interference with Stonebridge Holdings operations will result in additional sanctions. Judge Harriman concludes, this matter is decided. The gavel strikes with finality. The sound reverberates through the courtroom, through my chest. Thank you, Your Honor, I say, voice steady despite the emotion swelling inside me. As people rise, a gentleman in a dark suit approaches Preston, handing him a business card. I catch the words, Bar Association, before Carver guides me toward the exit. Mrs. Simmons embraces me, tears in her eyes. She's watching over you, dear. Eleanor would be so proud. Tenants surround us, offering congratulations. Mr. Garcia pumps my hand enthusiastically. Mrs. Peterson taps her cane on the floor in approval. All these years of documentation just paid off, Carver says, satisfaction evident in his voice. Eleanor knew exactly what she was doing. I turned to see my parents standing awkwardly at the periphery of the celebration. My mother's expression wavers between confusion and dismay. My father stares at the floor. Behind them, Valerie confers with Preston, her face carefully blank despite the defeat. For a moment, I consider approaching them with words of reconciliation. Instead, I turn back to the community, gathered around me, the people who trusted me, supported me, believed in me, when my own family wouldn't. This was never about revenge, I tell Mrs. Simmons quietly. It was about the truth. She nods, understanding in her eyes. The truth has a way of setting everything right in the end. Outside the courthouse, sunshine breaks through clouds that threatened rain all morning. The light feels symbolic, warming my face as I descend the steps with my real family, the one Grandma Eleanor helped me find. I stand in the renovated community room of Riverside Apartments, watching Mrs. Simmons arrange flowers on the buffet table. The morning light streams through new energy-efficient windows, highlighting the freshly painted walls in warm sandstone. 6 months since the court victory, and sometimes I still wake up expecting to find it was all a dream. "Miranda, where do you want the punch bowl?" asks Mrs. Simmons, now officially our resident liaison. Her silver hair catches the light as she turns. "Next to the cookies," I answer, adjusting the commemorative plaque we're unveiling today. My fingers trace the engraved words. Eleanor Wells Community Room, where neighbors become family. Mr. Garcia from 3B enters carrying a homemade cake. "Just like I promised," he says, "my mother's recipe to celebrate our new heating system." My phone buzzes with a message from Lawrence Carver, now permanent legal counsel for Stonebridge Holdings. The court denied Valerie's final appeal. "Congratulations, this chapter is officially closed." A weight lifts from my shoulders. Valerie's law firm placed her on leave after the trial revealed her financial manipulations. Last I heard, she took a position at a smaller firm across town. The phone rings again. My parents. After months of awkward conversations, they've slowly begun to acknowledge what happened. "We're running late," my mother says, her voice carrying that new hesitancy. "Your father wanted to bring those photo albums you asked about." As I set down the phone, Mrs. Simmons appeared at my elbow. "You never wanted to fight," she observes quietly. "You just wanted fairness." "I never thought I'd win," I admit, straightening brochures for our tenant assistance program. She squeezes my hand. "Eleanor knew you would. That's why she left you everything you needed." I nod, remembering Grandma's whispered words years ago. "Your sister seeks power. You seek connection. Remember which one builds a legacy." The morning sun shifts, illuminating the community room 6 months later. I stand confidently before the contractor team, reviewing renovation plans for the East Wing. My posture is straight, voice steady as I question a proposed materials change. The specifications call for commercial-grade flooring in the hallways. I say, pointing to the blueprints, "This alternative won't hold up to daily traffic." The lead contractor, who initially addressed his comments to my male assistant, now meets my eyes directly. "You're right, Miss Wells. We'll stick with the original plan." Later that morning, I took my coffee to the balcony of my new apartment, the building manager's suite where Grandma Eleanor once lived. From here, I can see the small garden where Mrs. Peterson tends tomatoes while chatting with a young mother who moved in last month. The waiting list for apartments now stretches to 37 names. Despite real estate pressure, I've maintained rents at affordable levels while steadily improving the building. My phone rings. Marissa, a young property manager who's been shadowing me. "The bank approved the Hawkins family for the payment plan," she reports. "Just like you suggested." "Excellent," I replied. "Remember what I told you. A building is bricks, a community is people," she finishes. In the afternoon, Mrs. Simmons finds me reviewing applications for our housing assistance program. "You're not just maintaining a building," she says, settling into the chair across from my desk. "You're building a home. Eleanor would be proud." Through my window, I spot Valerie's car pulling up to the curb. Her designer clothes were replaced with something more subdued, her posture less commanding. Our eyes meet briefly before she continues down the street. Perhaps there's a lesson learned in that glance. The seasons turn, bringing us to 1 year after the court victory. I sit across from Thomas Jenkins, a widower facing eviction after medical bills depleted his savings. "My landlord says business is business," he explains, shoulders slumped. The phrase triggers a memory. Valerie delivering my eviction notice with those exact words. I study his modest pension that barely covers essentials. Riverside has a flexible payment plan for residents in transition. I tell him, we can work with your income and adjust as your situation improves. Hope flickers across his face. I don't understand. Every other place turned me away. Riverside operates differently, I explain. My grandmother taught me that property isn't just an asset on a balance sheet. That evening, during our monthly community gathering, I watched 3 families who might otherwise be homeless share a meal in our community room. The Eleanor Wells Community Fund, now directed by Mrs. Simmons, has helped 17 households find stable housing this year. Property owners from neighboring buildings mingle with tenants, interested in our model. Your grandmother's vision is spreading, Mrs. Simmons whispers. Compassionate housing with dignity. My parents stand near the dessert table, tentatively engaging with tenants they'd once dismissed. Our relationship remains formal, but the rigid silence between us has softened into something that might, with time, heal. As the gathering winds down, I climb to the rooftop garden. The sunset bathes the neighborhood in amber light, highlighting the small improvements that have transformed Riverside. Grandma Eleanor's voice seems to whisper on the evening breeze. Power without compassion is just control. I take a deep breath, at peace with my choices. When people show you who they are, believe them, but leave room for them to become better. That's the true legacy Grandma Eleanor left me, more valuable than any property deed. My nursing bag hits the floor with a dull thud. I stand frozen on the basement steps, unable to process what I'm seeing. The twins' beds, dressers, and toy chests are arranged in a sad little cluster near the water heater. Their favorite stuffed animals, Milo's worn teddy and Tessa's purple unicorn, sit forlornly atop hastily made beds where cobwebs stretch across the ceiling corners above them. Mom? Dad? My voice echoes against the concrete walls. The washing machine hums in the background, a stark reminder that this space was never meant for children. The air smells of detergent and the unmistakable mustiness that no amount of dehumidifiers has ever fully eliminated. My mother appears at the top of the stairs, bouncing my sister's baby Caleb on her hip. Her face brightens at the sight of her grandson, then falls slightly when she notices me. Oh, Celine, you're home early. She doesn't meet my eyes. What is this? I gesture to my children's belongings. Why are Tessa and Milo's things down here? Dad emerges behind her, arms crossed. We needed to make some changes. Autumn needs a proper office space for her remote work, and Caleb deserves a real nursery. A real nursery? The words feel like stones in my mouth. As opposed to what, a fake one? The twins had real bedrooms upstairs. Mom sighs, the sound familiar from my childhood disappointment wrapped in exasperation. Celine, don't be difficult. Autumn's situation is different. She needs stability right now, and Caleb is at a critical developmental stage. And my children aren't? My hands begin to shake. The twins should be grateful they have a roof over their head at all, Mom says, bouncing Caleb higher as he fusses. Many children have less. The memory of moving back home 3 months ago flashes through my mind. The divorce papers still warm from the printer, the twins quiet in the back seat as I explained we'd be staying with Grandma and Grandpa, just for a little while. I'd swallowed my pride, agreed to contribute to household expenses, even though this was supposedly my childhood home, my safety net. Then Autumn arrived with newborn Caleb, her marriage crumbling just like mine had. But unlike me, she was welcomed with open arms and endless accommodation. The cooing over Caleb never stopped. The twins were scolded for playing too loudly, for laughing during Caleb's nap time, for existing in ways that might disturb the precious baby. You had no right to move their things without asking me, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. They're my children. Celine, Dad's voice takes on that authoritative tone I've heard all my life. Your sister's career and Caleb's development are critical right now. The basement is perfectly adequate. Adequate? I climb 2 steps until we're nearly eye level. It's damp down here. Milo has asthma. You're overreacting, Dad says. As usual. Autumn needed the space more, Mom adds. She's trying to build a future for Caleb. And there it is, the truth I've always known but never wanted to face. My children matter less. They always have. I reach for my phone, my hands no longer trembling. My colleague Brenda mentioned last week that her mother-in-law's rental cottage was vacant. Emergency housing only, she'd said with a sympathetic smile after overhearing me vent to another nurse about sharing a house with my sister and her baby. What are you doing? Mom asks, frowning at my phone. making other arrangements. The text to Brenda is simple. Is that emergency housing still available? Don't be ridiculous, Dad scoffs. Where would you go on a nurse's salary? You need us. Mom shifts Caleb to her other hip. Autumn is family too, Celine. You can't expect us to treat her differently just because you were here first. This isn't about who was here first, I say, walking back down to gather Tessa's clarinet case that's been haphazardly placed near a pipe. This is about respect. My children deserve better than a basement. My sister appears at the top of the stairs, her expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. The twins will adjust, she says. Kids are resilient. Convenient how that only applies to my children, I reply, brushing dust from the clarinet case. You're overreacting, Mom says, the familiar refrain. The basement is perfectly fine. We're doing you a favor letting you stay here at all. A favor. As if I haven't been buying groceries, paying utilities, taking night shifts, so I can watch Caleb during the day while Autumn focuses on her mental health. My phone buzzes with Brenda's response. Available immediately. Call me. Standing in this damp basement, surrounded by my children's displaced lives, I finally see what I've been denying for months, years, really. My parents have always seen my twins as less worthy, less important than my sister's child. And by staying, I'm teaching Tessa and Milo to accept this treatment, to believe they deserve less. I'll be upstairs when the twins get home from school. I say, my voice calm. We'll need to talk about this then. But as I climb the stairs, past my silent family, I already know what needs to happen. My children deserve windows, warmth, and respect, and I'm the only one who can ensure they get it. I can't sleep. The basement ceiling creaks with every footstep above, a constant reminder of where my children now rest. Milo finally stopped coughing an hour ago, his small body curled protectively around his teddy bear. Tessa pretended not to mind, arranging her unicorn collection on the cold cement ledge beside her bed, but I caught her wiping tears when she thought I wasn't looking. After tucking them in, I head upstairs for a glass of water, my nursing instincts on high alert. The house is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft glow from Autumn's laptop on the kitchen counter. She must have left it open when she went to feed Caleb. I'm about to turn away when a message notification pops up. My sister's name appears beside a string of blue text bubbles. I shouldn't look. But something pulls me forward, the same instinct that makes me check a patient's chart twice when something feels off. Mom said we can just put them in the basement. Autumn's message reads, dated 3 weeks ago. Celine works so much she'll barely notice, and the twins are used to making do. My hand flies to my mouth, stifling a gasp. The timestamps reveal weeks of messages planning sessions about my children's relocation while I work double shifts. Autumn's friend responds with laughing emojis. Your sister is such a doormat. The words blur as tears threaten, but I blink them back. This wasn't an impulsive decision made today. It was calculated, discussed, planned while I cooked their meals, and watched Caleb on my days off. I hear Caleb's cries from upstairs, followed by my mother's soothing voice, then footsteps on the stairs. I quickly step away from the laptop, my back to the kitchen entrance as I fill my water glass with trembling hands. Oh, you're still up. Autumn's voice carries no guilt, no recognition of what they've done. Mom's got Caleb. He's teething. I know. My voice sounds strange even to my own ears. I've been giving him teething tablets during my shifts with him. Later, after the twins are asleep in their basement beds, I find myself seated across from my parents and sister at the kitchen table. The house is quiet, Autumn gently rocking Caleb against her shoulder. They sit together, a united front. I stand, arms crossed, unable to settle into this tableau of family harmony. The basement arrangement is temporary. Dad says, not meeting my eyes. Until we figure out something more permanent. What does that mean exactly? I ask, keeping my voice level. Mom adjusts Caleb's blanket. Well, since Autumn's planning to stay indefinitely, we need to consider the long-term needs of everyone. Indefinitely? The word hangs between us. My therapist says stability is crucial right now, Autumn adds, her free hand reaching for the mug of tea. Mom prepared for her. Caleb needs consistency. And what about my children's stability? The question comes out sharper than intended. Dad's shoulders stiffen. Don't be dramatic, Celine. It's a roof over their heads. A roof I help pay for, I remind him. My contribution covers more than a third of the monthly expenses. A look passes between my parents that raises the hair on my arms. About those contributions, Mom begins, her voice taking on that placating tone I know too well. We've been thinking it makes more sense to pool all resources. Autumn needs help with Caleb's expenses, and since you're already established in your career. The realization hits like a punch. You've been giving my money to Autumn? Not all of it, Dad counters quickly, just helping her get back on her feet. While my children sleep in a basement. I press my palms flat against the table to steady myself. If you're that unhappy with the arrangement, Dad says with a dismissive wave, you could pitch a tent in the yard. At least the twins would have windows then. His cruel joke hangs in the air. No one laughs. Even Autumn looks uncomfortable, though she says nothing in my defense. Over the next few days, the consequences of our new living arrangement become painfully clear. Tessa's clarinet practice, once encouraged in this house, is now too disruptive for Caleb's nap schedule. She's forbidden from playing inside at all. Maybe next year you can try a quieter instrument, Mom suggests, as if her passion for music is merely a passing phase to be redirected. Milo, my usually talkative son, grows quieter each day. He speaks only when spoken to at dinner, his eyes downcast. When I ask him about school, he shrugs instead of launching into his typical animated stories about science class. He's just adjusting. Dad says when I mention my concern, kids are resilient. That night, after checking that the twins are asleep, I find Milo's inhaler usage log. He's been using it twice as often since moving to the basement. The dampness isn't just uncomfortable, it's affecting his health. I retreat to my own corner of the basement, a hastily arranged sleeping area behind a bookshelf, and open my banking app. The overtime shifts have paid off. Between my savings and next week's paycheck, I have enough for first and last month's rent on the apartment Brenda mentioned. As I stare at my bank balance that night, I wonder if I should confront my family one last time or simply leave without further discussion. Would demanding respect work, or would a quiet exit make a stronger statement? What would you do when your family has shown they value one child over another? The basement pipes knock and gurgle overhead, as if offering their own opinion on the matter. A week later, the doorbell chimes just as I finish my third double shift of the week. My body aches for sleep, but there's no time. Aunt Cynthia, Uncle Pete, and 3 cousins crowd into the living room, all cooing over Caleb and his bouncer while I slip off my shoes. There she is, Mom announces with exaggerated cheer. We were just about to give everyone the grand tour. Autumn beams, bouncing Caleb on her hip. I can't wait to show off his nursery, it's absolutely perfect now. My stomach knots. His nursery, the twins' former bedroom. The family parade moves upstairs, voices rising in approval at the freshly painted walls, the custom shelving Dad installed, the window seat cushions Mom sewed by hand. Never mind that Tessa had begged for shelves for her books for years. Never mind that Milo had asked for a reading nook since he learned to read. It's just what a growing boy needs, Aunt Cynthia declares, running her hand over the premium crib mattress. Uncle Pete nods toward me. Your twins must be very accommodating kids, letting their cousin have such a nice setup. My mouth tastes like copper. They didn't exactly have a choice. Silence falls before Mom jumps in. We're planning to convert the basement into a proper bedroom, eventually. But first, Dad adds, we're redoing the kitchen. Autumn needs a proper workspace for preparing Caleb's organic meals. Later, as relatives fill their plates in the dining room, I slip downstairs to check on Milo. His cough echoes against the concrete walls, a hollow sound that's become his nighttime companion since the move to the basement. Mom? He sits up, clutching his inhaler. Is dinner ready? Almost, buddy. I sit beside him, rubbing his back as another cough rattles his chest. How's the breathing today? He shrugs, a gesture too resigned for an 11-year-old. The same. Dr. Phillips said the dampness isn't helping, I remind him, handing him a glass of water. We have another appointment next week. Upstairs, laughter erupts. More than a week in the basement, and Milo's chronic asthma has worsened. The pediatrician's face had grown serious during our last visit. Environmental factors, he'd said, eyeing me over his glasses. We both knew what that meant. Will Hannah be at school tomorrow? I ask, trying to brighten his mood. His eyes drop to his inhaler. Doesn't matter. I don't invite friends over anymore. Honey, why not? Tessa doesn't either. He pulls his knees to his chest. It's embarrassing. Nobody else lives in their grandparents' basement. The truth of this strikes me like a physical blow. 2 days earlier, I'd overheard Tessa declining a sleepover invitation, making excuses about having too much homework. She'd stopped playing clarinet at home entirely after Dad complained about the noise disturbing Caleb's nap schedule. "You should come up for dinner," I tell him, ruffling his hair. He shakes his head. "I'll eat down here." Grandma said my coughing upsets Caleb during meals. Something inside me cracks, not breaks, but fractures deep enough that I feel the shift. I kiss his forehead and head back upstairs, stopping halfway when I hear my name. Celine's working herself ragged. Aunt Cynthia says from the dining room, 16-hour shifts can't be sustainable. "She needs the money," Mom replies. "Divorced nurses don't exactly have golden parachutes." I've been taking every extra shift available, building my savings account in silent determination. 3 more weeks at this pace, and I'll have enough for first and last month's rent plus security deposit on anything with windows. The next morning, my eyes burn from exhaustion as I change IV bags. "Brenda, charge nurse for our unit," pauses beside me. "Your hands are shaking," she observes quietly. "Just tired." She glances around before slipping a folded paper into my pocket. "That 3-bedroom on Maple Street? Owner's a friend of my husband. It's coming available next month, but he hasn't listed it yet." Her eyes hold mine. "Your kids deserve windows, Celine," she whispers during shift change. The paper burns in my pocket for the rest of my shift. Sunday dinner arrives with more relatives. Aunt Linda, Dad's older sister who speaks without filters, surveys the dining room as we pass serving dishes. "Don't the twins mind living in the basement?" she asks. Fork paused midair. The room goes still. My sister studies her plate. Mom's smile freezes in place. "What Linda means," Dad begins. "They won't be in the basement much longer," I interrupt, my voice calmer than I've ever heard it. "We're moving out next week." Forks clatter against plates. Mom's water glass tips, spilling across the tablecloth. "What do you mean, moving out?" Autumn demands, while Dad's face darkens like a thundercloud. "I've signed a lease. 3 bedrooms. In the twins' school district." The words come easily now, floating on the strange calm that settled over me. "You can't just decide," Mom sputters. "I can, actually." I turn to Aunt Linda. "To answer your question, yes, they mind very much. Milo's asthma has worsened from the dampness. Tessa hasn't invited a friend over because she's embarrassed. They deserve better." "This is about money, isn't it?" Dad says. "We can work something out." "This isn't about money." I place my napkin beside my plate. "It's about respect." Later that evening, Brenda answers my desperate call without hesitation. "Of course you can stay with us until the rental's ready. The guest room is small, but the pull-out couch is comfortable for the kids. I can't ask you to You're not asking. I'm offering." Her voice softens. "What your parents are doing isn't right, Celine." The contrast strikes me, Brenda offering genuine help while my family offers only criticism. She's known me for 3 years. They've known me my entire life. "Thank you," I say, my voice steady in a way it never is when speaking to my parents. For the first time in months, I make decisions without seeking anyone's approval. I call the landlord directly, fill out the application online, arrange for utilities to be connected. Each step feels like removing a weight I've carried so long I'd forgotten it was there. The following Saturday, my family gathers in the living room to plan in advance for what Autumn calls Caleb's half-birthday celebration. Once he is 6 months old, and the merits of decorated cupcakes apparently. While they fuss over which Instagram filter to use for photos, I quietly pack essentials into suitcases, tucking Tessa's clarinet and Milo's favorite books on top. The lease is signed. The keys are in my purse. The first week's stay at Brenda's is arranged. I zip the final suitcase and look up to find the twins watching me from the basement doorway, confusion and something like hope dawning on their faces. "Pack your backpacks," I whisper. "Only what you absolutely need for the next few days." Tessa's eyes widen. Milo's hand clutches his inhaler less tightly. "Are we really leaving?" Tessa asks, her voice barely audible. I nod, surprising myself with a smile that feels foreign on my face. "Yes, tonight." And for the first time in months, my children stand a little straighter, as if already breathing different air. Next day, the dawn streaks through Brenda's guest room curtains as I check my watch. 6:15. Perfect. My parents won't leave for Caleb's pediatrician appointment until 8, but I need this head start. "Mom?" Tessa appears in the doorway, already dressed in her favorite purple sweater. Behind her, Milo clutches his inhaler, eyes wide with uncertainty. "Ready?" I ask, keeping my voice steady. They nod, shoulders squared with a determination that mirrors my own. We've been planning this for 3 days ever since I signed the lease on our new apartment. Brenda's minivan purrs in the driveway as we load the first round of boxes. "Remember," I tell the twins, "just grab essentials today. We'll come back for the rest when they're gone." 30 minutes later, we pull into my parents' empty driveway. The house stands quiet, everyone still asleep. We move with deliberate efficiency, like a well-rehearsed hospital code team. Take only what matters most, I remind the twins as they descend the basement stairs. I watch them carefully select their treasures: Milo's science fair medals, Tessa's music books, the matching quilts my grandmother made before she died. With each item they rescue from the damp basement, their movements become more confident. "Stand straighter," I want to tell them, but I don't have to. I can see it happening before my eyes, their spines lengthening, chins lifting as they carry their possessions toward freedom. By 7:30, Brenda's minivan is packed with our essentials. I leave my house key on the kitchen counter alongside a note I've rewritten a dozen times, finally reduced to its essential truth. We've found our own place. The twins deserve windows. Later, we're unpacking at the new apartment when my phone begins its persistent buzzing. Mom, Dad, Mom again, Autumn. I silence each call until Tessa touches my arm. "Aren't you going to answer, Mom?" I set down the box of bathroom supplies. "Not yet, honey. We need to focus on settling in first." The voicemails pile up throughout the morning. I listen to them while the twins arrange their books on the shelves Brenda found at a yard sale. "Celine, this is completely inappropriate. You're traumatizing your sister by leaving like this." My mother's voice vibrates with indignation. Autumn is beside herself. Caleb can sense the tension. "Call us immediately." My father, authoritative as always. "I can't believe you'd do this to family." Autumn, the betrayal in her voice almost convincing. Each message strengthens my resolve like steel tempered in fire. Their concern isn't for my children, it's for the disruption to their carefully orchestrated household, the inconvenience of losing their built-in nurse and babysitter. I block their numbers, just temporarily. We need this space to breathe, to remember who we are, without their shadows looming over us. That evening, as the twins sleep in their new rooms, real rooms, with windows that open to let in fresh air, my phone lights up with a message from my supervisor. "Charge nurse, position still open. Interested in discussing tomorrow?" I stare at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The promotion would mean better pay, but more responsibility. More demands on my time when the twins need me most. Am I ready to rebuild my career while simultaneously rebuilding my children's sense of security? The next week passes in a blur of activity. Brenda arrives Saturday morning with reinforcements: Joanne from pediatrics and Marcus from the ER, their cars loaded with donations, a small television, a gently used couch, curtains that Joanne's daughter outgrew but matched Tessa's bedspread perfectly. "We raided the hospital donation closet," Marcus explains, hauling in a desk for Milo's room. Sometimes families leave perfectly good stuff behind. By Sunday evening, the apartment has transformed. The twins each have their own space, decorated with their favorite colors and interests. The living room holds a comfortable couch facing the television, a small dining table with 4 chairs, and a bookshelf already filling with our collective treasures. "Listen," I say to Brenda as we collapse on the couch after everyone leaves. "To what?" she asks. "Exactly," I smile. "Tessa's playing her clarinet." The sweet, clear notes of Tessa's practice scales drift from her bedroom, a sound I haven't heard in months. In the kitchen, Milo arranges his rock collection on the windowsill, humming along. I realize with a start that his persistent cough has disappeared, more than a week away from the basement dampness, and he hasn't reached for his inhaler once. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number, my Aunt Linda's cell. "Your mother told everyone you had a mental breakdown and kidnapped the children. Just wanted you to know the story they're spinning. How are you really?" I type back a simple response. "We're fine. The twins each have their own bedroom now, with windows." The replies start coming in from extended family members who've apparently been given my aunt's update rather than my parents' version. Support, questions, offers of help. 2 weeks after our departure, a text arrives from my father. "We need to talk. May I visit?" I set the phone down and watch my children moving freely through our modest apartment, their voices no longer hushed, their shoulders no longer hunched. For the first time in months, they look like themselves again. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, standing tall in rooms filled with sunlight. 3 days later, the doorbell rings, and I straighten my shoulders before opening the door. My parents and Autumn stand on the welcome mat of my new apartment, their faces arranged in carefully neutral expressions. Mom cradles Caleb against her shoulder, while Dad clutches a large gift bag adorned with cartoon dinosaurs, Milo's favorite. "You didn't need to bring gifts," I say, stepping aside to let them in. Mom's smile tightens as she enters. "We thought the twins might appreciate something from home." "This is their home now," I reply, my voice level. Autumn follows, her usual confident stride replaced by hesitant steps. Her eyes dart around the modest living room, taking in the second-hand furniture and the twins' artwork already displayed on the walls. "It's cozy," she offers, the politeness in her voice as unfamiliar as a foreign language. Dad sets the bag down and clears his throat. "We've been talking, Celine. We think we might have been hasty with our arrangements." Hasty? The word tastes bitter. "The twins can have one of the upstairs bedrooms," Mom says, bouncing Caleb gently when he fusses. "We could move some things around." "Share a room, you mean?" I clarify. "Instead of the basement." Dad shifts his weight. "It would be better than this situation." "This situation where my children have their own rooms with windows?" I ask. "You're punishing the whole family," Autumn blurts, her facade cracking. "The twins miss their cousins. Caleb needs his aunt." I meet her gaze steadily. My children aren't being punished here, and they certainly aren't being used to punish anyone else. The twins emerge from their rooms at the sound of voices, approaching cautiously. Tessa slides her hand into mine while Milo hangs back, watching his grandparents with wary eyes. "Would you like to see our new place?" I ask them, my voice warming as I address my children. Before anyone can respond, I lead them down the short hallway. "I've accepted the charge nurse position at Memorial," I announce over my shoulder. "Better hours, significantly better pay." I push open Tessa's door first. Her eyes widen at the transformation. Since this morning, the bookshelf we assembled together now painted lavender to match her bedspread, her clarinet stand positioned by the window where natural light streams in. "My friend Brenda's daughter outgrew her desk," I explain, running my hand over the white wooden surface, perfect for homework and practicing music. Next is Milo's room, with its blue walls and the glow-in-the-dark constellation stickers we applied to the ceiling last weekend. His telescope, a birthday gift from last year that had been gathering dust in the basement, stands proudly by his window. There's a park across the street. Milo tells his grandparents, his voice gaining confidence. "With a field where we can play soccer." Mom's eyes soften momentarily before she composes herself. "This must be expensive." "My children aren't bargaining chips," I say quietly. "They deserve respect as much as Caleb does." Back in the living room, the twins offer to give the official tour, pride evident in their voices. Milo leads his grandmother to the kitchen, opening the pantry door. "Look, we have a shelf just for our snacks," he says, "and we don't have to ask permission every time we're hungry." He reaches into his pocket and pulls out his inhaler. "And I don't need this anymore since we moved from the basement. Dr. Patterson says my lungs sound better already." "The basement wasn't that bad," Mom says automatically, then falters when she sees Milo's expression. "Remember when I couldn't stop coughing at night?" he asks, his voice small but firm. "You said I was doing it for attention." Mom looks away, bouncing Caleb higher on her hip. Tessa steps forward, her clarinet case in hand. "We can practice music whenever we want here," she says, assembling the instrument with practiced movements. She plays a flowing sequence of notes, the melody filling the apartment with clear, confident sound. Dad watches, his expression unreadable. Autumn stands awkwardly by the door, her phone clutched in her hand as if preparing for escape. "Who's watching Caleb next Tuesday when you have your interview?" she asks suddenly, the question directed at no one in particular. The music stops. Tessa lowers her clarinet, and I see the understanding dawn in her eyes, the realization that her aunt had been counting on my childcare services all along. "I'm sure you'll figure something out," I reply, keeping my voice neutral. "You're resourceful." As they prepare to leave, I notice the subtle shift in their dynamics. Dad helps Mom with Caleb's diaper bag instead of leaving it to Autumn. Mom asks Autumn if she's called the babysitting service they discussed. Dad pauses at the threshold. Celine, could I speak with you privately before we go? I hesitate, catching the twins exchanging glances. Whatever comes next, I know we've already won the battle that matters most. Give us a minute, I tell the twins, stepping onto the small balcony with my father and closing the door behind us. Through the glass, I watch Milo showing his grandmother the view from our third-floor apartment, not spectacular by any means, but it includes trees and sky instead of concrete walls and water pipes. Whatever my father wants to say, it can't change what we've built here, in this modest apartment that smells of fresh paint instead of mildew. It can't erase the sound of my children laughing, as they arrange their belongings in rooms flooded with sunlight. The battle isn't over. Family wars rarely end with a single decisive victory. But for the first time in months, maybe years, I'm the one setting the terms of engagement. 6 months later, the mortgage papers spread before me on the loan officer's desk, each requiring my signature. 6 months ago, I would have hesitated, called my parents to double-check I was making the right decision. Today, I sign my name with confident strokes. Congratulations, Miss Dalton. You're a homeowner, the loan officer says, sliding the house keys across the desk. I close my fingers around the cool metal, remembering the basement steps where my nursing bag fell that day. The contrast nearly takes my breath away from damp concrete walls to a modest 3-bedroom with windows that catch the morning light. My phone buzzes with a text from Brenda. We still on for housewarming Saturday? I smile, typing back a quick affirmative. At work, the other nurses now come to me for scheduling questions. Last week, doctor. Patel asked for my input on a difficult case, something that would never have happened 6 months ago when I kept my head down, trying to avoid notice. At home that evening, I find Tessa practicing her clarinet in the kitchen, while Milo builds a science project on the dining table. Neither jumps or apologizes when I enter. Instead, Tessa finishes her piece while Milo proudly explains his volcano design. Principal Hayes asked me to join advanced band, Tessa says, wiping her mouthpiece. And Jason invited me to his birthday party next weekend. Mrs. Wilson says my science project might win first place. Milo adds, his cheeks flushed with excitement rather than asthma. Can we paint my room blue this weekend? Real blue. Not that weird grayish color Grandma said was good enough. My phone rings. Mom's number. I answer after the third ring, a deliberate choice rather than my old instinctive grab. We'd like you and the twins to come for Sunday dinner next week, she says, her voice tentative in a way I've never heard before. Your father grilled steaks. Just us? I ask, not bothering to disguise my meaning. Autumn moved back to her condo last month, Mom says. Caleb's nursery is empty now. I take a breath. We'd be happy to come. But we'll need to leave by 7. Tessa has band practice Monday morning. The old Celine would have accepted any invitation on any terms. The new one sets boundaries. That's fine, Mom says. We understand. On Saturday evening this week, my small house fills with voices. Brenda brings a potted fern. For new beginnings, she says. 2 nurses from pediatrics arrive with a welcome mat. My charge nurse brings homemade lasagna. When Brenda raises her glass in a toast to finding family in unexpected places, tears threaten, but they're different from the ones I used to swallow back. Sunday this week, we paint the twins' rooms. Milo's deep blue, Tessa's lavender. Paint speckles their faces as they debate where to hang posters. I started a college fund, I tell them, and I enrolled in online classes for my BSN. You'll be the best nurse practitioner ever, Tessa declares, certainty in her voice. A knock at the door surprises us. Dad stands there, holding a toolbox. Thought you might need help mounting those bookshelves, he says, eyes taking in the paint-splattered scene. He sets the toolbox down. I'm proud of you, Celine. The words hang between us, unfamiliar and fragile. As I accept my father's tentative olive branch, I wonder if some family relationships are worth rebuilding, or if maintaining distance is sometimes healthier. What would you do? Work to repair broken family bonds, or focus on nurturing the new supportive relationships that emerge during your hardest times?